Hello and welcome to another video. So today we are checking out a Ambush Sword deck. Ambush Sword has been rising up the ranks as one of the more decent sword variants due to some of the new additions. Of course, the only new addition that I'm including at the moment is Everlasting Castle. I would ideally want 3 in this deck, I think, but currently only have 2 usable right this second without spending a bunch of vials that I don't want to waste on some mini expansion cards. But Everlasting Castle, definitely not bad. It does its job of pulling a Leod or whatever else you really want from the deck pretty consistently. Predominantly you definitely want Leod, that's what it's used for, and using it properly. Also the late game Steel-Clad Knights are nice if you need them, if you get to that point, although this deck does focus on winning fairly early on through its ambush dual blade combination or just through pure pressure. That's why we are running other things such as decent removal with Usurping, Ivory Sword, and Dancing Blade, all really good removal cards. Even Brave in there, Intervention is really good since it does again pull Leod out and deal damage, which is great. Otherwise, we're mostly just focusing on buff and debuff. So Jiraiya is actually a really great debuff card and does a wonder against a lot of crafts right now, including Haven, which is good. Otherwise, this deck is pretty straightforward. I have seen people using hybrid-y type decks using the new Frontal Guard, which is really nice as well, so I may check that craft out soon. They are also running usually an Evo package, but honestly, all quite interesting decks floating around, and I definitely recommend checking out as many different ones as you can. So we're going to get right into this and check this one out. So, first off, I'm playing against Portalcraft. I mentioned in my previous video, it's very popular right now, so we are seeing an uptick in Portalcraft players pretty much all the time, which is not so great, honestly. I'd rather deal with less Portalcraft, if I had to be completely honest. But not necessarily overall bad. So, double Well of Destiny and Leod plus Dual Blade Fury in our opener is actually not too bad. The only real issue would be if we get swarmed real quickly. That could be a real problem early on. Also, there are some decent counters to our early amulets, but we are running so many other buffs that usually that's not a problem. So I go for the Leod instead of the other Well of Destiny, mainly so I can start getting that buff ball going, especially going into turn 3 and 4, where I want Ivory Sword Dance and such to come in handy. And as you can see here, this is actually a problem, so I opt to go for the Forged Weaponry instead of Well of Destiny, so that I can get well and truly enough buff that when I use my Evo, the Ivory Sword Dance as well, I get a +4, upping us to 9 damage, which will be enough to wipe this board. And ideally, I should probably have held on to the 0 cost card here too. That's what you want to be able to do most of the time, since it does cost nothing to play. You want to use it to go face with Dual Blade Fury usually. That's the biggest advantage you can get. Plus, now we're at 10, so Dual Blade plus that, 20 damage, turn 6. Pretty much a perfect setup for this deck. So our second game here is going to be against Shadowcraft. You do typically find this deck, when it does work, it works well early game. You don't usually run into too much trouble unless you come up against random removal, which typically is only a huge problem against Shadow here, as you'll probably see. As if your Leod is removed early on, it can be hard to recover fully. We got double Everlasting Castle though, which is actually fairly good. I can use that immediately on turn 2 to get out Leod, while also getting the amulet out. Since you're not required to have a lot of board space for this deck, you really only need the 1 or 2 spots available, so permanent amulets aren't a huge problem. And I can actually go for the Forged Weaponry, which is a nice little boost to kick us off. The 1/1's not really an issue yet, and I'd rather personally leave them up for the moment. Now I get a nice chance to go for Spine Blade and another Everlasting Castle for a second Leod. So this is a really good start so far. Underworld Air, not so good to see. We don't really have a good way to get rid of him effectively, since we don't have any great removal other than Dancing Blade at the moment. She's really our only good removal card, so it's probably what we're going to have to use. We also got Veiled Reckoning, which is not bad if we're using it straight up as removal. I decided that I'm probably better off pushing now, getting that extra damage in while I got the chance, since I can of course go for the defensive play right now as well. So this actually worked out pretty nicely and left them with just the 1/1 on board and the Ceres coming down, which honestly, not really a problem, Ceres. Coming into the next turn, we've potentially got 10 damage if we want it, maybe even more if we have a decent draw, but our really only trouble would have been having to go through next turn without ambush. So luckily for us, we got the exact Ivory Sword Dance we needed. And that was enough to force our opponent into the concede. It wasn't too much of a surprise. We had another Fury, we have another Evo. We could have pushed them fairly hard, so pretty overall good. That doesn't mean this deck performs perfectly every time, of course. You'll notice that a few times it's very easy to lose, since you can brick quite quickly if you don't have a good way to get Leod. That's why most of the cards that you're running focus on either removal, buffing, or gaining Leod. So we have 3 Leod gains plus the 3 Leods in our deck already, actually totaling up to, looks like 10 out of 40 cards, basically a 1 in 4 chance of being able to get Leod out on its own, which is good. Along with all the other support cards that really do help. So if you guys did enjoy this video, be sure to check the link in the description below for the deck list. You can hit the like button and subscribe for more content. Until next time, guys, see ya.